Are you looking for a way to scale your short-term rental business and buy more properties? Well, co-hosting might be the right fit for you. Welcome to the Co-Host Coach podcast with Joe Rohne. This episode of the Co-Host Coach is brought to you by Savvy STR Agents. If you're looking to buy a short-term rental, then contact the STR Savvy Agent team at savvy.realty.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Co-Host Coach podcast. I am Joe Rohne. I am the Co-Host Coach, and I am super excited to be here, and I'm really glad that you are tuning in on the first ever podcast. This podcast is really all about how to become a co-host, what a co-host is, sharing some different tips, tricks, different kind of tools that you can use to be successful in your co-host journey. Now, one of the most important things we're going to talk off right off the bat is, what is a co-host? And for many of you in the short-term rental space, you know this. It's something that everyone talks about often, but there are many that don't. In fact, I was just talking to a real estate broker yesterday, and they have over 50 properties that they manage, and they have a real estate brokerage with 100-plus agents, and they have never heard of a co-host. In fact, most owners that you're going to become a co-host for have never heard of a co-host. They've always used the traditional property management system, and that's just the way it's always been. So we're going to really identify today what a co-host truly is and make sure everybody's on the same page. A co-host and a property manager really wear the same hats. We really want the same things for our clients or for the owners of these properties. We want to manage the property well. We want to keep them full. We want to manage the cleaning teams. We want to manage the maintenance teams and really make sure we're doing everything in a rental management, whether it be in a vacation rental or a suburban space, to keep the properties operating really well. There's really three main differences when it comes to a property manager on how they traditionally do it and what a co-host does. The number one reason, or the number one difference, and this is really more of the legal side, is where does the money go? So a traditional property manager, typically to do that, you got to have a real estate broker's license. You need to have a property management license. There's different things, and the reason for that is how you handle the trust accounting and all the money that's flowing into that property manager to make sure they're not commingling those funds in their own personal account or doing different things, right? So a big thing that the traditional property manager does is they'll collect all the money throughout the month. They're going to pay the cleaners. They're going to pay the maintenance guy or the handyman. They're also going to take care of and pay for all the taxes that they collect. And at the end of the month, they're going to have a little bit of money left over, and they're going to send it to the owner and say, this is what you made for the month. And they'll give them a statement and let them see that. In the co-hosting space, we actually don't touch the money at all. None of the money flows to us. It all flows to the owner. Now, we do still take care of a lot of those things and wear the same hats. We still handle the cleaning teams. We still handle the maintenance guy and the handyman, and we still pay those bills throughout the month in our own personal funds or our own business funds. And then at the end of the month, that owner is going to reimburse us, pay us back, as well as whatever the fees are, whether you're co-hosting for a flat fee or a percentage, whatever it may be. That's the biggest difference, is where the money flows. Now, number two difference in this space is a traditional property manager is going to own the listing. They own everything about the listing, including, if they're XYZ property management company, every single one of their properties, whether they have 20, 50, or 500 properties, they're all listed under that property management name, and that's how they do it. So if an owner decides they want to make a change and they decide, I want to self-manage, or I want to fire my property manager because they're not doing a very good job and they want to change, they pretty much have to start over. And it's because that property manager owns the listing. So they own all the reviews. They own all of the guests' information that have been there so they can remarket to those guests. They own everything, and that's part of the contract. So when you do fire your manager, you're starting over fresh. Now, that can seem a little bit scary, but if your reviews are low and you're not getting booked, then it's probably time to make that change, whether you're going to self-manage or hire a co-host or another property manager. Now, the way it works with a co-host is that the listing is actually in the owner's name, right? So all the money's flowing to the owner, the listing's in the owner's name. So down the road, if that listing owner decides, you know what, I'm going to start self-managing, no, we don't have to cancel any future bookings. They don't lose any guest communication. Everything is still in their listing. They just take the co-host off and they can continue operating. So it's a win-win for both the owner and the co-host because it makes the transition so much easier and so much nicer to be able to do that. So, whether they're just switching it to another co-host or they're self-managing, nothing changes. It's actually really, really nice. The third, and in my opinion, the most important difference between a traditional property manager and a co-host is how the day-to-day stuff is managed. If you think about a traditional property manager that has hundreds of different listings, how are they marketing your property if you're the owner? How are they, making sure that that particular condo or that particular house is getting more bookings than their other 100 or 200 or 500 properties? The honest truth is they can't. Now, that doesn't mean they don't do any marketing because they do have an email marketing campaign, most of them, and most of them will do different, ads for their management company to get people to go to their website and book properties that are on their website, but you're still a needle in a haystack with all of those properties, and your property is really just a number. So that's what I tell these owners is when they're with those traditional property managers, their property is a number, and there's just no way that management company can, identify and market that particular property, or they can look at the property to see what it needs, what kind of updates it needs, and things like that. So in the co-hosting space, we are managing typically less properties, as a property manager does, traditional. And so that allows me, for my properties, to manage them each one just like they're my own, right? So I can manage each property just like they're my own, and I can do daily listing optimization. I can do daily or every other day revenue management, changing prices. I can run Facebook ads. I can do TikToks and Reels and do buy-sell trade groups and email marketing. I have so many things that I can do to market these properties to keep that calendar full and help that owner make more money, right? At the end of the day, this is a true partnership between the owner and the co-host. And if we make money for the owner and make them more money, it's a win for everybody. And that's really what the object is to do. So a co-host can really, truly manage these each day, just like they were their own, and put a little more daily emphasis into it. Typically, a co-host is not going to have 100 properties. I've seen most co-hosts in that 5 to 15 range is what's most popular. And I think that's a really good range to be successful. And you don't need 50 properties to build a 6-figure co-hosting business that's going to be life-changing for you and your family. All you really need is 5 or 6 really high-quality properties that you can crush it and help those owners make more money, which is going to help you make money. Now, there's nothing wrong if you want to be a co-host and have 20, 30, 50, or 200 properties. There's nothing wrong with that. And there are some co-hosts out there that have 50 plus properties or more, and they are crushing it. And they have great teams. They have employees. They have virtual assistants. They are really, have a full system in place, and they are doing fantastic. And they're still operating in the co-host model over the traditional property management model. So there's nothing wrong. What you need to do if you're wanting to get into the co-hosting space is write down your goals. What do you want, right? So I always say that, it takes the same amount of time for me to manage a property that does $50,000 a year as a property that does $250,000 a year. So if I'm spending X amount of hours per week on a property and I'm charging, let's say 20%, well, at $50,000 a year property, I'm making about $10,000 a year. For the same amount of time, I can manage that $250,000 property and make $50,000 a year on one property, right? So, getting those extra luxury, those bigger homes, those nicer homes, that really makes a difference. The other thing that we always do is making sure that as co-hosts, we can make sure that the owners can keep the decor and stay on top of what the amenities that are offered, do updates and look at those on a quarterly or twice a year basis and say, okay, Mr. Owner, you need to do some updates. If you want to stay relevant, if you want to stay ahead of the curve and continue to crush it, we've got to make some minor changes. And that's something that you can do as a co-host that a traditional property manager is never, ever going to look inside your home and say, hey, you need to change your blankets and your comforters and, put a mural on the wall and get some arcade games or whatever it is that you're going to do. A traditional property manager is never going to look at that stuff. They're just going to manage the day-to-day tasks. Now, this is a big question that I get, and I'm going to have a few of you that'll probably message me and say that I am completely wrong. But who should be a co-host? I personally am a firm believer that if you are going to co-host properties, you need to own your own short-term rental and know what you're doing first. The bottom line is you are taking over an investment for another owner, whether it be their retirement plan, just an investment property, whatever it may be, and you are taking that over and you are going to be managing it to help them make more money. So if you are not an industry or an expert or have the experience to do it, and you're just a keyboard warrior sitting at home wanting to make some extra money, that's probably not the position that you need to be in. So I'm a firm believer that you should own your own short-term rental, self-manage it, so you know what the day-to-day tasks are like. You know what those phone calls are going to be like. You know what you're doing, because a person that has never managed a short-term rental before is not going to know what to do when they get that 9 p.m. phone call and they're out to dinner with their family and someone just checked in and the air conditioner went out, right? So they're not going to have the plans in place or have experienced that before, and they're going to be panicking because they've never had to deal with that kind of stuff. In my co-host mastermind, I have a co-host collective mastermind. Every single member at least owns one property that they self-manage, and many own multiple, 2, 3, 4 or more properties. And what that does is it gives them a vested interest into the co-hosting and property management to make sure they truly know what they're doing before they actually take on somebody else's property. And in that mastermind, because all of these members are owners and self-managers, it brings so much value because I learned so much from every single one of them on every one of our calls because they've been doing it. And some of them have been doing it for many, many years, and they bring so much value and have different ideas, and we share a lot of stuff, and we can do that because we all own our own and we all self-manage. The future of vacation rental management and short-term rental management, in my personal opinion, is all about the small boutique managers and co-hosts. And the reason I say that is because more and more of the bigger companies are struggling. They're struggling to find good help. They're not able to get the houses clean enough. They're not able to handle the maintenance. And don't get me wrong, some of them, there are some really, really good property management companies out there, and they are not all in the same bucket, but there are also some really big ones that are really struggling. So you really have to be able to stand out in the new short-term rental world if you want to be successful, right? You can't just have an average property and, average customer service and not do any listing optimization and be successful when there's, I think we went from 101.4 million to 1.6 million Airbnbs. I mean, that's a lot of increase over the last year, and the last few years have been more and more coming on the market. So it's more important today to stay relevant and updated and, make sure your property is standing out. In the small boutique management business or co-host business, we can help the owners do that, and that's going to help them make more money, which in turn is going to help you make more money as a co-host, right? So my wife and I started our journey just a couple of years ago. We bought one short-term rental. Shortly after, had an investor approach me, and we partnered on a second one on the same street within a couple of weeks of each other. And we jumped into the short-term rental space, and I wanted to become an expert in the space, and I did everything I could to do that. And less than 6 months later, I was able to jump into the co-hosting space. And I only picked up 2 cabins for that very first spring and learned everything I could with those first two and didn't build a six-figure business or anything. I just wanted to make sure I had all of my processes in place, all of my systems in place, and then it was time to grow and scale. And in the past year, that business has gone from co-hosting 2 properties to co-hosting 8 properties that currently year to date has over $200,000 in gross revenue and almost $100,000 profit for my family. And we are just now halfway through the year. 2+ years ago, I didn't even know what a co-host was, just like many people today. So if you do own a short-term rental and you are interested in finding a way to make more money, it truly can be a great place for you as a side hustle or a completely new business if you want to leave your W-2 job. So technology is one of the great things that we have that allows us to do this. We can manage all of our properties from our phone or a laptop or whatever it may be. And Airbnb has made it easy because they have a co-host option to where we can actually use the app, select ourselves as the co-host for these owner properties, and manage them on a day-to-day basis and manage all the guest communication. That being said, if you want to jump in and be really competitive, you're going to need to use other platforms like building direct booking websites and getting a VRBO listing, and maybe you use booking.com or one of these other places, Google Vacation Rentals. And when you start adding all of those to the platform, you're going to need a property management system and you're going to need a tech stack. And that kind of leaves me to what we're going to be talking about next week, because those are really important tools to be able to use and implement, and understanding how to use them as you build your co-hosting business. So until next time, I appreciate you joining me on episode number 1 of the Co-Host Coach. This is Joe Rohne, and thank you so much.